Today on Get Paid Podcast, we got Aaron Levie, the co-founder and CEO of Box and one of the tech's sharpest and most outspoken minds. I am super excited about this one because I known Aaron and I follow him for a very long time. So he started Box in 2005 from his college dorm room with a bold bet that the future of enterprise was in the cloud. That was crazy back then. Now, 2 decades later, he's proven right. Box now powers content and collaboration for over 100,000 companies, including 70% of the Fortune 500. He is known for his hot takes on Twitter, and Aaron has become a leading voice on the future of work and AI and what it takes to build enterprise software that people actually use. As you know, most of the stuff is shelfware, not Box. In this episode, Aaron talks about building through hype cycles, where SaaS pricing is headed in the AI era, and why delivering outcomes, not just features, just outcomes, is the new competitive advantage. Aaron, let's go get paid. Aaron, so good to have you again.
Hey, good to be here.
I am so excited. A huge fan. I've been following you since you started Box. You know, you were my role model of CEO and how to build a company when I built Outreach. So this is a bit of like interviewing a hero. So thanks again for being here.
Okay. No pressure, I guess.
So let's start from the very top. What's going to happen to all these SaaS companies that are retrofitting an agent model into their business to get on with the times? Are they doing it right? Are they doing it wrong? Was it biggest mistake? What's the best advantage?
I think that one part of me says I think the trajectory is pretty good around how various SaaS companies are figuring this out. And on the other hand, just having, seen history in these sort of disruptive platform shifts, I recognize that there's a meaningful chance that in 10 years from now, we'll look back and we'll laugh at kind of how naive we were on the architecture we chose or the billing or pricing model we chose. And, it's the question is basically that we all have to kind of figure out is it 2008 in the era of the mobile disruption, or is it 2005? With the distinction being in 2005, we were all building, these sort of very weird, janky mobile, Frankenstein interfaces that were like Java based or like weird WAP protocol based things. Or is it 2008? There's an app store. We know that you should build, iOS or Android native apps, and we've all kind of figured this out.
Right.
And I would say categorically 2 years ago, it was 2005. The ChatGPT moment was the iPhone of AI, but it actually didn't introduce the sort of ultimate end user architecture for most SaaS products. Because if you had just seen ChatGPT and you said, "Oh, the future of all software is you just query everything in an interface," that was sort of the wrong insight to take from that moment. The right insight really kind of came about a year later, which is, wait a second, we use these models to basically develop agents, and those agents basically do work in the background. And whether you're talking to it in a chat interface or you're kicking off, in a normal workflow pattern, that doesn't really matter as much. And it's really about this new unit of value that your software provides, which is agentic workflows or agentic work. And now, so I would argue that we're definitely probably more likely in the 2008 kind of moment of mobile, where we do understand these patterns. We're all kind of coalescing around what this idea of the agent is. It's hard for me to perceive that there's something kind of more disruptive than agents on the horizon, because this alone is sort of has uncapped productivity potential for what you can deliver now in your software. So I think I think the industry and existing SaaS companies are coalescing around the agent idea. And then you have this big question of, okay, well, how do you monetize it? How do you price it? How are these deployed? Which have, unlimited amounts of interesting kind of contours around those questions.
So you were in the zeitgeist when things were moving to the cloud. You're actually you jump heavy on the evangelism train, and so things have moved to the cloud. What parallels can you draw from that experience into the experience we're in right now? So you said, oh, you need to change how you deliver the software and how you charge for the software. So those are big, meaty questions. Those are kind of fundamental questions that you have to answer that could break or make a company. So what's going to happen to that question? Like, how are people going to do with their seat model and their reliance on actually butts and seats versus humans and agents, or one or the other?
Well, so First of all, I love the conversation that is out there of, okay, is the seat model dead? Does the AI agent kind of abstract all of that? Like, I think it's a super interesting and enjoyable conversation to debate, because I love debating, anything related to enterprise software and business models. My take is probably going to be a bit more nuanced,
Mm.
and partly because that you just get kind of more pragmatic the more kind of gray hair you have in this industry, and
All right,
so
let's get the younger Aaron Levy one, the one that goes to the
I know
edge.
the naive one, yeah, and you live long enough to see Oracle as a $600 billion company. When you're naive, days, you would have said, well, everything's obviously moving to SaaS, and this business is, going to get totally disrupted. And you just, you're constantly reminded that Larry Ellison's the GOAT and Safra's amazing, and these companies just, they find a way through. So in the more pragmatic version of now the era that I'm in, I think realistically we're going to see a hybrid, which is, I think that the seat model is still so well suited for the human part of the interaction of agents. And so I don't see a reason why that goes away. You might have pricing pressure on the cost of the seat, because on a
Yeah.
relative basis, the kind of consumption part of the software is adding more value than the seat itself. And so could that introduce some downward pricing pressure? It's plausible. And then you have this sort of uncapped, unlimited upside, of the consumption model, of the amount of work that the agent is doing or agents are doing, which, each company I think has to navigate to their own version of what that looks like. And I think, you guys certainly see every version of this, and I'm very fascinated by the different approaches, because some basically say, okay, we're going to take a kind of a cost plus model, and we're paying a certain amount for the AI, and we'll add 20% on top of that. Others take a sort of like, what was the human work equivalent, and try and, sort of say, okay, we're going to do 20% of the cost of what the human would have cost. And so it's a value oriented model. And then there's sort of stuff in between, which is, okay, let's just see if we can squeeze kind of what's the upper limit of a cost plus approach, where we get 80% or 90% gross margin on the cost, because the value that we're providing is so massive. But
Right.
maybe that actually still ends up being, you know, 95% cheaper than the human version of what that would have cost. And so you've ended up in this kind of interesting quasi middle ground. And then you have other, kind of another axis of this, which is, is it the amount of hours that the work is happening? Is it the amount of kind of chunks of business outcomes? Is it, each task that the agent is responding to in a customer service request queue, or is it the amount of lines of code written? So I think it's like super fun how many different areas you could go down. I think as an industry, we're going to run into a little bit of an issue with customers at the end of this, which is potentially some degree of fatigue, which is, I have 20 different, AI vendors that all have 5 different ways of pricing. So I have 100 different ways of sort of trying to figure out what I'm going to be paying for all of this, kind of AI agent work. That's going to eventually be a really interesting problem that SaaS actually solved for the customer, because you could just say, okay, that thing's $20 per user, that thing's $25 per user, that thing's $40 per user. I kind of understand it. AI agents, unfortunately, have the ability of have sort of uncapped, potential expense on the customer side. So, as an industry, you have to also have, the customers are playing another role in this, that we all have to navigate. We're a set of software vendors. We might have a set of theories that eventually has to get tested by the market, and we will have to kind of coalesce around what that looks like.
So when you go to your customer, what's a version of value that you're selling now that you were not selling 2, 3 years ago?
Yeah. So, the amazing thing about our position, is, and I think that there's lots of SaaS companies that have a version of this, but we get very excited about ours, is, um, we have always been basically limited by the number of end user humans on the other
Right.
end of our customer, for the amount of value we could create for them. And so
Right.
we have software that helps companies manage their contracts and their invoices and their financial documents and their marketing assets. And so we have a very wide amount of use cases that we can help customers solve. That's the really fun, amazing part. The challenge is we might go to a legal team and we might say, hey, we've got a really great way to manage all of your contracts. But
Right.
they might say, oh, well, we don't have enough people to go and label all the contracts to make sure they go in the right place. So we can't really, fully utilize the full power of your platform. And so then they use us in maybe a more, kind of a simpler, less powerful way. Well, this is the first time now we can actually bring labor with our software. And so we can go to that customer, we can say, hey, your legal team is 5 or 10 people, but what we now pack into our platform is the equivalent of 100 lawyers that
Right.
are doing way more work for you to be able to go and label all of your contracts, extract all the data from them, and give you a really well organized way to manage your contracts. Then you can go to the procurement team and say, hey, all those invoices that you process. Well, it used to be that you were manually processing all of that. Now we actually bring the labor that can automate those workflows with our software. Or we can go to the marketing team and say, hey, all of those marketing assets that you have, well, we can now organize them, and basically extract all the relevant data from them so you can search them and find them in a way that, again, you couldn't before. So for us, we can, in many cases, do the equivalent of doubling, tripling, quintupling the staff of our customers by bringing agents with the software that they're buying to solve way more use cases. So the kind of quick back of the envelope way that I think about this is which categories of software were historically underutilized because the customer didn't have as much talent on their side to fully take advantage of all the capabilities of that software. And those will be the areas that have the highest degree of upside with AI agents. And so
Right.
if you kind of like have that mental model, you can almost look across all of software and figure out where's all the potential of these products. Where have you had software that could be way more powerful in a world where the customer had unlimited kind of capability to go use that software, and that's where you're going to see so much upside. So this is why I think we're seeing breakthrough startups in legal and professional services and financial services and healthcare and insurance, because these are spaces where the company never really was able to fully digitize their workflows before. They had lots of manual processes. That means you have lots of software that has basically gone underutilized relative to what it could go power.
So how is it not when you say now I give you the equivalent of 1,000, legal assistants? How is that not replacing labor? Because you made the argument that AI is here to help the humans and it's gonna
Mhm.
be fine. But like those are jobs that you did not hire for. Now that you have the agents doing the work.
Yeah, let's maybe separate two things. There's the in a vacuum version of this, and then there's the okay, what actually happens in the economy as this plays out.
Yes.
In a vacuum, if you kind of like perfectly extrapolated, one role or one category of roles, and you saw what AI did, you might say, okay, that could replace 10% of a category of work. But the important thing is to realize what actually happens in the economy and within a business when that occurs. So let's just take a real life example of what we're seeing, day in and day out. Most of the time, when we are going to a customer and we're showing them what AI agents can do on their software with their data, with their unstructured data in box, their first instinct is to solve use cases that they were not deploying humans at before.
Right.
So it is not the case that they had 10 people that were labeling all of their contracts. It was that actually they were just manually working through their contracts before, and they were
Oh, I see
wasting
what you're saying. So the job was never there to begin with. So there is nothing out of the economy. Got it. Got it.
right.
Got it.
And
Got it.
so if you think about it, and so in most areas of an organization, the cost to doing something new is usually correlated to hiring a new person to do that job. And
Right.
so in we have the vast majority of workflows in a company, you're kind of sitting around being like, sure, if I had like unlimited resources, I would go solve that workflow. But the starting cost of now solving that problem is hiring a person to go do that thing on day one. My fixed expense now is 50,000 or 100,000 or $200,000 just to start doing that unit of work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you have so much work that never gets done because the incremental cost to even starting is that fixed full-time human or outsource or whatnot, but you still have a high startup cost. And so actually most work in an enterprise is not happening because you have that high fixed cost. So what if the first expense it ever took to label extract data from a contract was $1 instead of $100,000? Like the very first contract that you send to your business process outsourcing firm is going to be $100,000 deal you have to do with them to get that first contract labeled. So that means that on day one, that's how much you're spending to get started. Well, with AI, you might spend $1 or 10 cents as your first starting point. So all of a sudden, 100 times more potential areas of automation emerge in an organization that you were not deploying humans at before, that now all of a sudden AI agents can go and kind of slip into. Great example is what we're using even with AI coding. Like a significant portion of the AI coding that we're doing within Box is usually just getting to the next task that engineer would have had to do anyway, but we're just getting to it faster. So we don't see that as, well, we just saved an engineer. We see that as we now accelerated our roadmap. And so now if we can accelerate our roadmap, what happens next? And this is where the economists get this all wrong. If we can accelerate our product roadmap, that actually encourages us to hire even more engineers, because now we have higher productivity in this part of the organization to deliver even more value.
Are you seeing that in your customers though? Because some customers are saying, dude, like the reason I started Pay is because I remember distinctly this one conversation I had with the CEO of a very large company who told me, Manny, you're launching agents next year. You told me about it. Now I want to know how fewer seats I need because I'm going to hire fewer people to deliver this incremental number. So let me bank on the savings right now. I have a board meeting in a week. I need to bring this to the board in the form of operating leverage. How is that not showing up for you and your customers?
Yeah, so I think that I think you're going to see plenty of that. There's no question. So let's assume that 20, 30, 40% of the economy initially thinks about AI like that.
Right.
I think for every company that has that conversation, there's going to be another company that says, I'm not going to measure this on how many people I reduced. I'm going to measure this on how much output I increased. And all of the companies that have the paradigm or prism of I'm going to think about output increases, those companies have a totally different frame of reference or way of operating through this, which is when I go talk to the marketing team and we say, let's go launch this campaign, I'm going to ask, why can't we launch it in 20 markets instead of 2? I'm going to ask, why can't we personalize it to way more demographics instead of only 1 or 2? I'm going to ask, why can't we do this in a week instead of 3 weeks? None of those questions related to, I want fewer people working on this. Every single one of those was, why can't we do more? Because AI is going to help accelerate the execution of this effort. This is a total N of 1 example, to be very clear, but we've had multiple things even in our marketing department where we will use AI to help accelerate a project that I can almost guarantee we will be adding more headcount to that area because AI made it now more plausible that we will do more of those types of marketing activities.
Interesting.
So by lowering the barrier of doing a category of work, we've now decided to invest in it for the first time, which now means more people are going to go and work on that particular type of, in this case, it's content strategy, marketing, production. And now we will have more people working in that area than we did pre-AI, because AI has now made it so we can better execute that part of our strategy. And I think you're going to see as many of those scenarios as you see the scenarios that are, okay, I just want to specifically reduce expenses using AI. And that's why I think it balances out. And then the only other kind of point to make is you can't last that long as a business if your only metric is reducing expense, because you will have a competitor who decides that they don't want to be on the expense reduction side, they want to be on the output increase side, and that company will just better serve your customers. And so for a single cycle, you might be able to reduce expense, but over any kind of meaningful period of time, the company that delivers more value or has more output will be the one that ultimately wins that specific market.
Yeah, no, 100%. You can't get to growth by cutting. I think that's clear. And I agree with you that the cycle will eventually turn. So how do you This is super fascinating because what you just said is that you have expanded the amount of work that is available to get done. So before you have to say, you only get to work on priority 1 and 2. With AI, you get to work on priority 1 through 10. Why? Because it's all available to you. So how are you capturing? So first of all, how are you capturing that value of the incremental work getting done and all these other efficiencies you're bringing into the equation? And do you feel like you're capturing it right? Like if you had like the magic wand of Aaron
Yeah.
and bring younger Aaron back and he'd be brash and like, I want to do this extreme thing that hasn't happened yet, what would that be?
Well, right now, so we're 100% committed to going AI first as a company, and essentially that means let's look at every opportunity, every workflow in the company, and figure out, do we have an opportunity to use AI to accelerate that? So
Yeah.
so that's the general mental model: is let's use AI to do more faster,
Yeah.
and every project that we see, let's ask ourselves, could AI kind of help with this effort? And that's the approach that we're taking. We've generally had this stance that right now we just want to do way more, to experiment way more, to use AI way more, and not overly worry about either the budget of that AI or the direct kind of A/B test of the ROI, because we just want maximum, kind of usage of this technology to get familiarity with the tools. We want employees to have the right vocabulary around this. We want them to test different models within our product and figure out what works better. So right now we're kind of in just go fast, try anything you want, with a bunch of constraints around compliance and governance and whatnot, but not being overly prescriptive in a tops down way about how to use this. I think the where I'd like to be in a year from now, 2 years from now, is the magical end state, at least in this sort of transition period, while we all collectively figure out what a fully AI first company looks like, would be, I'd like to be able to go to an engineer's roadmap and see that, basically like 0% of their time is spent on the classic stuff that we always got slowed down by, which is like, well, I'm doing I'm doing a bunch of testing work over here. I'm refactoring this thing. I have to upgrade this library from some old version to the new version. And you add up all of that, and they have like 15% of their time left for the actual feature that the customer is asking for. And you're like, wait, how did we lose 50, 60, 70% of our engineering capacity to basically run the business things that are table stakes, that you have to do them to survive, but your customer never experiences the end result of that value proposition.
Right. There's
And
no joy
so
in that. Yeah.
yeah, and so what I'd like to be, at as imminently as possible, is like, that's 0% of the human time. Maybe it's a couple percent because you got to oversee it all. And all of our time gets to be spent on what feature to build next, how it should look, how it should work, ideating through that. I like the idea of, you can see with these latest kind of coding systems, the ability to have kind of parallel agents running in the background, which basically gives you the ability to almost kind of do multivariate testing of how you'd even build a feature. Imagine a world where, the typical debate of how you'd architect some, product that you're working on, you spend days, hours, weeks debating the architecture. What if you had an agent go try every version, and then you empirically get to just see like which one does work, which one scales better, which one works better within your environment? Like, that becomes super interesting now, new ways of thinking about coding. So I'd like to take that kind of approach and apply it to every part of work. How do we streamline every legal, contract review that we do? Well, we have Box AI that automates, how you review the contract and get all the insights from it. How do we onboard every sales rep or employee to instantly become an expert at how you work with customers, or work within your particular field or domain? Well, that's an example where you take all of the kind of corporate knowledge in the company and you turn that into insight for your employees with AI. So these are a few of the ways that we think that will transform how we end up working in the
Yeah.
future.
So in the vast customer set that you have, especially in SaaS, who is getting this wrong and how are they getting it wrong?
Well, I don't know that anybody's getting it probably the most wrong you could get it is by just avoiding it or ignoring it.
Right. Right.
I'd say that's an increasingly very rare small camp, and so that almost doesn't matter because they'll figure that out soon enough. I think that the companies that are overly obsessed with cost cutting, I think, get it wrong because, again, you should be focused on output increase or capability expansion. But also, I think that you're also creating an inherent tension with employees that I just think creates an environment where people then have to feel like, okay, anything I go and automate, I'm probably then risking my own job in the future if I go and automate that thing. You actually want people to be encouraged to automate their work,
Right.
and not feel like at the end of that your goal is basically to try and replace me. That is not going to be a way to get adoption of an AI system within an organization, which is
Yeah.
why we are so maniacally focused on, and we talk only about how do we drive output, because that's actually the thing that we care about.
Yeah, no, but I agree with you. But then you see companies like Microsoft that say exactly what you said, and then lay off 3% of the workforce every year on the clock.
Yeah, but I think the tricky thing is they do that with or without AI. Like, and I think we're in an environment where two things can happen. One, the press will conflate those things, but also companies sometimes have an incentive to also conflate those things as well.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I'm not saying that there was zero impact of AI, to be clear, but unfortunately we're in an environment where you will be very hard to untangle which outcome actually drove that. Take the meta cuts that happened 2 years ago, let's say. I
yeah.
don't think AI was mentioned once in those cuts, yet they were able to do a massive efficiency gain because they realized that they overhired during the pandemic. They had lots of redundancy. There was lots of people not being able to do daily execution work that was creating value, at least in their estimation. And so then they had to do some major efficiency cuts. And again, that was pre AI. So unfortunately, we will be in an environment where when these cuts happen, it will look like AI was a big part of that.
Right.
And I guess in like the most micro sense, they might actually say, okay, well, yeah, now we are able to do that thing with AI, but that cut was probably driven by some other efficiency program that was
Got it.
going on in the organization. So I wouldn't over rotate on these sort of one-off examples.
Got it. So is your mind AI is just the blanket, the story blanket to cover all these things. Could have been over hiring, just performance, etc. But we're not gonna call it. We're just gonna call it AI and just go,
I,
just
I
move
I
on.
think we're going to see probably a bit of that. It's a little bit unfortunate because that will actually kind of raise the temperature level on this debate, and like people like Bernie Sanders will then totally jump on that. And so we as an industry are doing ourselves a disservice when we kind of over prop up that message, because that's actually the surest path to overregulation of this technology. So I hope people are more thoughtful about when if you're doing performance management and calling that AI, like you just we might get what we pay for on that one.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. That's a good call out. I think that we all need to dial it back a little bit because we don't want heavy-handedness at this moment where we're just getting started. Now, back to let me press on this, is everybody getting it right on the SaaS and including AI thing? Because Jason Lemkin, and he has been very vocal about how a lot of SaaS companies are getting it wrong. They're bolting on AI and just calling it, AI company, when in reality there is very little AI or any little AI products in it. Is a change happening fast enough for the billions of dollars of SaaS out there that may or may migrate into AI?
I think that this is the fastest I've ever seen our industry pivot all at once in a
Yeah,
unified way. Where again, there's still some coalescing around architecture decisions, but so I could argue that it could happen faster. There's no question. But I've never seen anything as uniform as this push.
yeah,
And again, to Jason's point, there's probably some that are kind of not doing it in as robust of a way, or they're maybe just kind of just doing the incremental changes, and they're in wait and see mode. But I mean, if you look at, let's say, the biggest incumbents, the ServiceNows, the Salesforces, the snowflakes, et cetera. I think these companies have found religion on AI. I think they're all in. I think that you look at even kind of the next generation Airtable, just a couple weeks ago or a week ago, basically relaunched the company as a no code app builder with AI.
mm,
They're in this great position because their data model of this giant spreadsheet database is kind of this nice architecture for building no code applications. So I think that the companies, especially Intercom on the customer support side, Linear with agents running in the background doing project management, Asana very similar, Atlassian. I think these companies that are let's say the 2007, 8, 9, 10 to 2015 crop of enterprise software and SaaS. I think these companies have pivoted quite effectively. And I think I'm pretty happy about where we're at in this journey, and I don't doubt Jason's point. I'm sure he's seeing an even bigger picture than I am. But I've been impressed by how fast this is happening. Now, again, I think people are going to we're going to get lots of wrong examples along the way, just because this is moving so quickly. I can't tell you how many meetings that I'm in with head of engineering, CTO, head of product, various teams where we have a fork in the road of uh, uh, you know, I'll give you just a real time example. We have examples in our product where we have to make what should be the simplest decision of all time. Do we have something in the product that says that you're running uh, an agent 10 or 100 or 1,000 times, or that you're running an agent one at a time 1,000 times?
Yeah.
And just that delta is a different architecture design on, is it the same agent running 1,000 times, or is it 1,000 agents that are
One.
deployed individually?
Yeah.
And we have to make that decision in a vacuum where 100 other companies have to make that exact same decision. And there's a very high probability that we'll make the wrong decision and every other company will make the right one, or there's a mix. And then in a year from now, we have to kind of go and re-architect that decision. And so imagine that times 100 of these decisions every single day. Pricing is a
Mm,
perfect one. Do you price by, in our world, do you price by the number of documents that you extract data from?
right.
Do you price by the number of pages of the number of documents? Because actually, pages correlate way more closely to the ultimate cost. Do you price by the amount of tokens that are streaming through the agent? These are questions that we have to just rapidly make when again we don't yet have the benefit of seeing how it all the chips have kind of come together.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think you're seeing some cases, maybe some companies have to pivot and readdress an issue, or maybe so one company's not moving fast enough, and it's because they're working through those architecture decisions. But I've been pretty impressed by how fast this space is moving.
Yeah. I love the optimism. I think that I'm in the same camp as you. I have to believe that everybody's is got the memo and everybody's moving on. And like these are just hard decisions, period. And like,
Yeah, I
you know,
mean, I mean, there's no board of directors in software that is not making this the number one topic of every board meeting.
100%. 100%. So now let's play this forward a little bit. Cause like now you can develop software faster. You can build more features that address, the compounding effect of your customer needs. As you solve one problem, you get access to the next problem. So you went from, file storage to document management to now this continuum of like information management. But that puts you in direct competition with a significantly broader set of competitors, right? Like, so it used to be the box, Dropbox, and now you're, for all intents and purposes, you're competing with DocuSign, you're competing with Icertis, you're competing with Conga, you're competing with Glean, because now you can like, look up the entirety of information in the company. So how does so am I heading in the right direction? Is this happening? Are we all becoming compound startups? And B, what's the competitive dynamic in that world?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that we will compete with many of those names. Our general stance is to try and be as complementary as possible to any system that wants to use data. So we plug into Glean. We're happy to plug into different contract systems. We're happy to plug into the legal agent that wants to use documents. So our starting point is we want to be an open platform. If data is in box, we want to connect it to any software or any agent that a customer wants to work with. And at the same time, we want to be able to deliver more and more value for our customers. So we want to move up the stack by not just being the place where you store the data, but the place where you operate and automate workflows around that data as well, while again connecting into all of the software that you want to work with. So I do think it's incrementally there's more competition. But we see it way more through the lens of just we want to offer more and more value for our customers that have their data in box, and we'll be super friendly and complimentary to all the places that a customer might want to work from to be able to use that value, use that data for creating value as well. But yeah, I mean, the thing that we get really excited by is historically unstructured data, which is your documents and content. So contracts and marketing assets and invoices and financial documents, all of that is unstructured, which means that historically computers have been very bad at really being able to understand what's in that data, or be able to automate the work around that kind of data. So you share it, you store it, you look at it, you collaborate on it, but you never really access it or touch it again.
Right.
And so with Box and now with AI, we're able to say, oh, well, you could actually revisit that data over and over and over again and ask it questions and automate workflows and have agents that go and work through all that data to be able to move any business process forward faster. So for us, it's this holy grail moment of like, wow, we actually can deliver so much more value to our customers than we ever could have imagined.
So, what would be your advice to a young AI agent startup company to capture as more value in a fraction of the time than Box did, in the last 15 years or so?
I mean, what I get really excited by is if you think about the early days of SaaS that we were in,
Yeah,
the general playbook was that there'd be a kind of a software product for every kind of major domain of business process. There'd be a SaaS for ERP and ITSM and payroll and CRM and in our collective job was we're going to fill a slot in that SaaS architecture,
yeah,
and then there was another set of tools that would help you kind of glue those things together. And that was the first era of SaaS. And it was basically just, it was delivering modern enterprise software in the cloud.
yeah,
AI agents kind of give you a little bit of a reset moment where where you're still going to have all those categories, and I generally argue that those categories will have natural AI agents that are built on those platforms. So a lot of the AI agent versions of those software categories, I think the incumbents will do a very good job at serving those use cases. But it turns out that there's probably 2 to 3 times more categories now than there was in the SaaS world, because AI agents much more approximate what a person does as opposed to just a category of software. And so we actually have probably 2 to 3 times more categories of what humans do than we do traditional software categories that AI agents now can go and enter. So we really did never had any at scale software for legal review. We never really had any at scale software for consulting. Software for a consultant. Like
yeah.
consultants just like work in Microsoft Word and they store their files in the cloud and that's about all they do. Well, all of a sudden, every category of labor should have a set of AI agents that can basically help do that category on the behalf of that user, which means that you have so many more opportunities for startups today because there is not a natural incumbent in that particular space. This is why you see companies like Harvey that have been able to grow very quickly, largely without any major incumbent software category that they have to compete against, because they're really actually helping just the human do more of their work, not just delivering a pure, kind of, typical software platform that we would have seen in 5 or 10 years ago. And so I think you have categories now that are opening up for the first time in every single category of labor that startups can now enter. And so I think you're just going to see a lot of that, begin to emerge. And so if I was a startup, I would be looking for those opportunities where there's not an existing natural incumbent, but now for the first time, AI agents can go let you build a new product or service in that category.
That's amazing. Something that's been in the back of my head for a long time is this. What happened to systems of record once AI agents have access to all this unstructured data? Doesn't need to be in rows and columns. Anything can now become a system of record. So what's the role of a system of record? Does a system of record even exist in this world?
Yeah, I think so. This one I will take to the grave. I
Run it.
I think that I think you really do need to have a separation of duty or a church and state between what the agent is doing and the underlying kind of object model, data model, or kind of business process. Because I think there's a lot of risk in having deterministic information get owned by a non-deterministic system. I think there's a high degree of business process risk by accidentally kind of mixing those streams. And so I don't think the system of record goes anywhere. I think, I could squint and argue that, again, the pricing power of the system of record could get compressed a little bit. But honestly, some days I flip and I say, actually, in a world of agents doing 100 times more things with that system of record, I could argue that actually the pricing power could increase because actually the data that's in there is so valuable, and the risk of getting it wrong is so extreme that actually now the premium goes up by having a very, very powerful system of record.
Mm,
And the ability to have, again, ensure that only the right agent is updating the right field, and you're not having, malformed data, and errors get introduced, and it screws up your data model. That actually becomes now a new risk that wasn't actually a risk with humans as much, because we're very slow. And so you could never like really overrun the CRM system with bad data. Well, agents really could. And so now actually the value of getting that system of record right could actually increase,
mm,
for instance, in the future. So I'm kind of a little bit mixed on where I land on that. But what I know for a fact is you will not be using the AI system as your system of record. That's way too risky. And architecturally just doesn't even make any sense. You're using your AI system as the intelligence or reasoning layer on top of the system of record. And that actually makes the data inside of that system of record even more valuable. And so I think that's the future architecture that we will land on. And I also don't believe in a world where every day a user wants to kind of reprompt their view of their data. I think that this is also why I think SaaS doesn't sort of get obliterated by agents, because I think at the end of the day, when I want to look at my sales pipeline, I just want to click a thing that says sales pipeline, and I don't want to have to go back and forth and chat with an agent to rebuild that sales pipeline every single time I want to look at it. And so again, we have to be more comfortable with the idea that there's a new paradigm that doesn't necessarily replace the old paradigm. It lives alongside the existing paradigm. And there's plenty of historical precedent for this. So it shouldn't be that kind of confusing. Like, somehow we're 20 years into the mobile revolution, and I carry my phone around with me everywhere, and I'm on a laptop right now, and I am completely ambidextrous on which one I use. And I can't even predict sometimes if I'm going to read an email from my phone or my laptop. I don't really have a very strong preference. I'm just using these two different things, even though the entire form factor is different. The UIs are completely different, but we just sort of adapt to different ways of using these mediums. And I think agents will just be another version of that, which is I go to agents for one type of thing, but I'm also perfectly fine with the GUI in the SaaS or the software for a particular part of the workflow. And I think we like to imagine like these are all or one propositions when they're really not.
but we did go through a full replacement in the SaaS era, right? Like, Salesforce did replace Siebel. You see what I
Yes,
mean? You did replace like on-prem storage. So
totally.
like there is a replacement cycle of even the system of record. So, what is it?
Well, yes, but think about it. I mean, if we get really reductive, what was replaced was the delivery paradigm of the software.
Yeah.
It was not in my data center. It was in now my it was in the cloud and delivered via the browser. I didn't have to VPN into it. But at the end of the day, it's pixels on a screen and it's buttons that I press, and to a completely uninformed end user of software, like, other than the fact that software 20 years ago kind of sucked to interact with, and now it's a lot easier. Like, to the user, almost nothing changed.
Mm.
It was a delivery model, transition of software, and a highly disruptive business model transformation. And so this is why it's not obvious to me that agents uh, are then, like, everybody wants to only interact with everything through agents, because again, like, even that on-prem to SaaS transition was to the user, it was not the most different thing of all time. Everything, just all the capabilities of software just got better, but I didn't have to relearn how software worked in any kind of fundamental way. I didn't kind of changed my interaction paradigm with software. And so I think agents change everything, but because now I can press a button and have work be automated for me. But the idea that I only go to the chat interface and that fully abstracts out the software, this is sort of the Satya thing that went viral 6 months ago or whatever. I'm not fully convinced that is the outcome that we had down.
Interesting. So in your mind, it's just going to be a CRUD agent sort of new type of family of software that is going to coexist.
I think that agents effectively add on top of the SaaS paradigm, and it's actually like almost like too perfect of an outcome. Like SaaS was basically, we spent 20 years building APIs into every capability of our software. We generally have good, reasonably clean data models, and so agents just slot in almost perfectly as these kind of super users of our software. And it doesn't sort of reinvent the core paradigm of, I want an ERP system to be my system of record for all of my financial transactions and all of my inventory and all my supply chain. I don't want that knowledge packed into an agent that might kind of modify something accidentally. I want that to be very clearly in a deterministic system, and then I want an agent to be able to go and connect that to other systems or answer questions or automate workflows around it. But I don't think that changes then the value proposition of having the ERP system or having the ITSM system or having the CRM system.
So Salesforce, ServiceNow, Workday, they're safe. Nothing to worry about.
I look forward to replaying this in 10 years, and it might be like I might be so laughably wrong. But just think about other paradigms, right? When if you look, just think about a completely different field, right? When movies came out, when TV came out, it coexisted with movies. Radio and TV always have had an interplay with each other. Like you add one more paradigm to an existing set, as opposed to these things kind of subsume each other.
Well, movie theaters did go out of businesses. Like a few of them filed for bankruptcy. Like it did. There was a big disruption.
But we're streaming as much as ever, and unfortunately, you have these idiosyncratic things like COVID, where, let's say COVID had not happened, it's not obvious to me that the movie business would be in the shape that it's in. So I think like that to me is not an example of the paradigms don't work well together as much as society changed for some really interesting black swan reasons.
No, that's super interesting. Aaron, super grateful to have you here. That was an incredible conversation. I think our audience is going to benefit tons from this. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you? Anything that you're passionate about that we should tell our listeners?
I think we covered most things. I mean, I would just argue that everybody should be thinking about AI agents for expanding the capability of their software and their organization. And when you have that kind of prism in which you execute, you will find 10 times more interesting things to do than just replacing some kind of cost center.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you. Your message always strong, always positive, always on point. And thanks again for making the time.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Super grateful. See ya.